I'm so excited about today's podcast. First of all, I want to welcome everybody to Body, Soul, and Spirit podcast. I want to talk about escaping a victim mentality. How do I avoid being a victim of what has happened to me? How do I avoid having a mindset that feels like a victim because of a past, because of situations that we've all been through, because of a trauma? How do I escape that type of mindset where I feel like a victim? There's a difference between having a mindset of a victor and having a mindset of a victim. A victim mindset is a type of mindset that feels sorry for oneself. Somebody who maybe looks and makes excuses as to why they've not been able to attain, achieve, succeed, or identity crisis begins to come into our lives because we feel almost as if we had a bad hand dealt to us in life. And it doesn't necessarily come across in a conscious type of way. We might not even know it, but we can be carrying a victim mentality and not know it. And typically when we carry a victim mentality, it leads us to make a lot of excuses. It leads us to a faulty identity. We start to have this kind of way of looking at ourselves in a very negative context. So the first thing I would say to escape a victim mentality, a mindset that feels like a victim, I would tell you, I think we've all been there. I get it. There's been moments in my own personal life where it feels like life was just not worth living. Sometimes it feels like the world was against me, right? It was a belief. And if you have that belief, it's probably because at some point you had that experience. You feel like everything's working against you. You feel like things are looking up and then all of a sudden things start to look down. You feel like you're going 5 steps forward and then 3 steps back. And it's really not a feeling, but it's really just a belief system. So when you think of a victim mentality, it's not necessarily a feeling. Although feelings also arise from it, but it's also a belief system. It's a belief that one has about oneself. And maybe that happened as a child growing up. You know, you grew up in a certain environment, in a certain atmosphere, and you had certain experiences. And maybe you were a child that felt helpless, alone. And all of a sudden, this belief system started to show up for you. And now you're no longer experiencing that as a child. However, that belief system stayed. It's possible that you could have a victim mentality that stems from a childhood and then not really recognize that it's there. And I want to say to you the second thing, that in the present, where you are right now, you can heal. No matter what has happened to you, healing is available for you. I guess the question would be, are you willing to heal? Or have you totally given up? Are you willing to heal and move forward and deal with the wounds of your past that have held you in captivity because it's evolved now to a victim mentality? Are you willing to let that go? The fact that somebody's asking for help or looking for help tells me a lot because you're now looking for healing. And that's a very good sign. That's saying, I no longer want to be a victim of my past. I want to be victorious. I want my ashes to be turned into something beautiful. The other thing I would tell you is don't try to do it on your own. We are humans that evolve in connection and community. We cannot grow, we cannot transform without connection and without community. So please know you're not alone. Reach out. You may feel lonely, but you're not alone. You're not alone. Those beliefs and those feelings that you have that stem from a victim mentality, sometimes they come from circumstances that were abnormal. And through that, right, we begin to have a lot of mental health struggles because of these abnormal circumstances. They might even be normal circumstances that happen because it's life. And we need to be people that understand that through that, what we've experienced, that sometimes we might have these beliefs that we're going to have to confront. Because oftentimes a victim mentality feels like other people are against you. Do you feel often that other people are against you? Do you sometimes think that people are not for you sometimes and then they're just against you, so your circle gets smaller and smaller? I'm not talking about boundaries, healthy boundaries. I'm not talking about protecting one's heart. I'm just talking about this faulty belief system that you feel like the world's against you. And through that, you have these health struggles, right? Mental health struggles. You can't get out of your own way, in other words. You're in your own way. And it's important for us to look at ourselves and often ask, hey, am I carrying this victim mentality? Am I triggered by some things? Is there things in my life where maybe you're going through your day or you're going through your week and then these triggers come forth? I will say this to you. Oftentimes we can recognize a victim mentality because we're constantly being triggered. And I want to say to all my listeners, I've been guilty of that, where I'm triggered about a specific text that came forth. A text will trigger me. A certain noise will trigger me. And then, I don't know if this has happened to you, but it's happened to me in my own personal life. But I really want to give hope to those that are listening right now. There's sometimes these triggers that pop up, and I thought that I was getting better. And then you often ask, what's going on? Why am I triggered? Why is this coming up? And when we say that, why is this happening to me? Let me help you as far as the victim mentality is concerned. Oftentimes, victim mentalities think like that. They process thoughts and triggers that way. Hey, what's going on? I thought I was over this. Why is this coming up again? Now, when you think about that, that's really not a question. When we say that, it's a statement. It's not a question. What is going on? Why is this coming up? In other words, this shouldn't be happening to me. But if you keep asking that way, why is this coming up? Then we're not going to learn anything. But you can learn something from those things that are stemming up. Why are you doing this? If I ask you, what if I say, look at the difference. If I say, why is this happening to me? Or why am I doing this? As opposed to, I wonder what's this about. I wonder what's really going on. I wonder why my first response or reaction would have been this. See, this makes us think, as opposed to this statement and not a question. Because if I make a statement such as, this is a victim mentality, what's going on with me? Why am I triggered again? That's a statement. That's not a question. As opposed to, I wonder why. Why am I feeling that way? What happened? What is going on? See, when we make it a statement, it is a statement of resistance. It's a statement of resentment. Now think about that. When we have a victim mentality, these are statements of resentment. Resentment is there. There's a resistance to even my own self. I'm in my own way. That's a victim mentality. And when you think about these triggers are actually important for you because it's great information. And when you think about a trigger, right? And I've talked about this in my previous podcast, and I heard one psychologist talk about a trigger, and he described it as a gun, right? When you think of the trigger of a gun, it's such a small little compartment of such a powerful weapon. But when you think about a little trigger, right? If I don't have all the parts of a gun, if I don't have the barrel, I don't have the handle, but I only have the trigger's not going to work. So triggers in your life are great opportunities to learn. Am I carrying a victim mentality? And you can focus on the resentment. You can focus on the resistance. You can focus on the situation that caused that trigger, or you can focus on what's inside that maybe you haven't resolved yet, that maybe there's still rejection there, that maybe there's still some issues in your personal life, wounds that have not been tended to. When you think about a gun, without all the other compartments, the trigger is not functionable. In other words, a trigger is such a small component and we make it such a big thing. You have to start to get very curious. Maybe you think about these triggers, right? And you often wonder, in a statement, rather than in a question, you're now stating something. But with compassionate curiosity, start to get curious. Is there still pain of that rejection? Why is that brought up? And through that trigger, am I still carrying that wound? Victim mentality will do this. Why is this coming up? Oh, I shouldn't be here. Oh, I shouldn't do this. I should be further along. And you're not compassionate with yourself. And when you're still wounded, right? When you're not a victim of what happened to you, you start to get curious. You start to become very compassionate. And you become conscious that you need some healing still. So change the language. That's another thing I would tell you. If you don't want to be a victim of your past, change your language. Change how you talk to yourself. Because when you're hard on yourself, you're extremely hard on yourself, that can lead you to a victim mentality. I used to be really, really hard on myself, not realizing that I really was becoming a victim of what had happened to me. And that voice in my head, right? Because those voices in our head, we get into this relationship with this voice inside of our head. One psychologist referred it as a stupid friend. I kind of like that because when you think about the voices in our head that cause us and lead us to have a victim mentality, they're called the stupid friend because at some point, something happened, something came up when we were really small. And that stupid friend, that voice in our head, we make assumptions, right? Unconsciously. You know, I don't think that they love me. We make assumptions. Nobody is for me. We make assumptions. You know, everything I try to do, it goes wrong. And that part of us that tried to keep us safe, that tried to protect us, it has a voice. And it becomes very difficult to get on this road to recovery and journey and really know who we really are. We become so separated, so disconnected from who we really are when we become this victim of what happened to us. And when you start to identify the voice of the stupid friend, that voice inside of you that tells you that people are against you, that, you know, things don't work for you. Why am I going through this again? You know, oh, that's a trigger. Or you feel like you're not enough, or you feel like you're not good enough, or you feel rejected, right? It's that voice that's telling you. It's like an immature little stupid friend that's still there talking to you, trying to torment you to try to protect yourself. And you, at some point, have to tell that voice, you once protected me, but you know what? You can't protect me this way anymore. It's leading me to become a victim of my past.